Have you ever thought that maybe you're failing because you've set the wrong goals for yourself? We're going to talk about standards today. Do you ever think that maybe you set the wrong standards for yourself and that's why you're struggling with something? I was having a conversation with one of my online groups and we got into this discussion about standards. And I used the example of it hit me not too long ago that when we set standards for ourselves, so often we set standards and we don't really think about what those are. And what I mean by that is, let's say, just use an extremist point of view. Let's say you've set the standard, I need to be a billionaire. And now you live your life by that standard, by that expectation, that goal, right? We're always told, set high goals, you got to achieve, blah, blah, blah. And when you set that standard of, I have to be a billionaire, every day you don't make it there, you don't feel like you're making progress, you're going to get hard on yourself. You're going to punch yourself, right? Because I can't believe it, man. I set these standards and then just not achieving. And question is, did you set the wrong standards? And we were having this discussion because I realized not too long ago, it's like, man, what are the standards that I'm actually holding myself against? And there's a reason that we have heroes in our lives. We have people we look up to, people we admire, but the difference is, are we supposed to be that person? So whether billionaire or, fittest man on earth or whatever, if that's in your wheelhouse and that's your lane and that's what you're going after, cool. But I think sometimes we end up getting our wires crossed and we think, I can be that person, when in reality we can't. To me, it's akin to, man, if you're 4'10", you probably ain't going to be playing basketball. Now, a lot of people, you can't tell them that they got to push and they got to. Let's play averages here. The percentage of chance of making the NBA goes up the taller you get. Now, do I do you a service? Do you do yourself a service? If you're 4'10", do I do you a service by telling you, well, man, shoot for the NBA? You might as well. No, it's probably not in your cards. Just like it is not in my cards genetically to be 275 pounds with 4% body fat. It is just not genetically. Have you ever seen Ronnie Coleman before he started taking steroids? The guy was a genetic freak. Now, you can say, oh, there's plenty of bodybuilders, as soon as they're off steroids, they're not genetic freaks. They kind of are. And when you run into those guys who are just another world genetics, you recognize it. So I do myself a disservice if I hold myself to the standards that I shouldn't be, because then I get mad at myself, right? And we had one guy in the group, he was hammering all kinds of stuff, right? And he had set his standard of, I need to hammer all of this stuff to be a better man for my family. And God bless him, I thought for a second, and I was like, wait a second. You're going to prove to yourself that you're good enough for your family and that you can be better for your family by spending time away from your family and chasing after all of these other things in order to come back and prove. Now, I'm not insulting him. He's a very bright guy. He's very driven, hardworking. But the question is, do we end up taking the standards and we get the wrong priorities in place, thinking that that'll prove to us what we should have been going after in the first place? If you want to be the best husband, you have to set that as your priority. If I'm going to be the best husband, you don't get there by setting up all this stuff over on the side. And that's going to prove how great of a man I can be to be the best husband. Sometimes the best discipline you can have is to realize your standards are wrong. And can you actually have the humility to release yourself from those standards so that you can set the real standards that you should chase after? There is a romanticism that we place in some of our standards, whether it's living like a Spartan or, becoming a billionaire or becoming the next tech mogul or whatever it is. And I'm not saying don't go after your dreams, but be realistic with yourself. The more honest you can be with yourself of what have I been designed to do? What has the Lord placed in me? What is my purpose? You start to free yourself from the stuff that doesn't matter. Because in the end of time, are we trying to fulfill our potential? Or are we trying to prove something to everybody else as well as ourselves? And I know for me, part of that is the standard issue. If I don't reset my standards of what I expect out of myself, it's because I'm trying to prove to myself or prove to others something about me. When in reality, if I would just pursue what I've been built to do, then I prove to myself and others without having to try to. I don't know if that makes sense, but follow that logic. It's kind of that same idea of a person who just loves playing music and just they gravitate towards playing the guitar, let's say, and they play for hours. And it's not I have to be the best musician in the world. It's purely they become the best musician out of love for it. Jimi Hendrix was that way. It wasn't he set out to be the best guitarist in the world ever. He just loved to play. And so when you're true to the standards that God has created you to fulfill, that's when you become the best of yourself, and then everybody will recognize it. And it's amazing how much pressure we put on ourselves, including depression and anxiety and discontent, because we've set the wrong standards. So my challenge to you guys is going to be this. Think about, what are your standards? And actually be humble about, have I set the wrong standards? Have I set the standard that I need to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, every single morning, working out for an hour and killing myself and sacrificing time with the family and sacrificing work time? Do I need to be at the office 16 hours a day in order to get that next promotion? Because why? Now, if you have a powerful reason, good for you. If it's to prove something to yourself, an insecurity, I want you to pause on that and think, is there a better way to be who I'm supposed to be? Because at the end of days, does it matter if you got up every single morning at 4 o'clock? Do you have to be Jocko? Now, I'm not saying the discipline isn't important. It's very important. And I think it's a powerful discipline to have. But if you miss a day, do you destroy yourself because you didn't make the standard? Or did you need a day to spend with a family, to go do something with the kids, to reorganize your schedule? Take this time to figure out your standards, because I'm telling you, if they're wrong and you've held yourself to the wrong standards for a while, you're going to tear yourself apart, and you'll probably start tearing apart other people when you're not making those standards that you were never meant to make in the first place. Guys, pursue, but stay humble with the Lord. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.